The cold autumn wind swept across Westcliffe, Colorado, as Olivia Fletcher clutched her shivering daughter against her chest, their threadbare shawls offering little protection against the biting chill of 1878. They sat huddled on the wooden steps of the First Baptist Church, the last rays of sunlight casting long shadows across the dusty street, as townsfolk hurried past with sideways glances but no offers of help. "Mama, I'm hungry," 6-year-old Emma whispered, her small face pinched with cold and fatigue. Olivia stroked her daughter's tangled brown hair, trying to mask the desperation in her voice. "I know, sweetheart. We'll find something soon." The words sounded hollow even to her own ears. 3 days since they'd been evicted from their rented room. 3 days of begging for work at every establishment in town. 3 days of being turned away with the same pitying but firm rejections. The church doors had been locked when she tried them earlier. The preacher and his wife were away visiting relatives in Denver, according to the notice posted on the door. Olivia had nowhere else to go, no family to turn to since her husband Thomas had died in the silver mine collapse 6 months ago. The mine owner had paid her a pittance barely enough for the funeral, claiming Thomas had been working against company rules. The money had run out, and with it, the goodwill of their landlord. As the sun dipped below the jagged peaks of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, the temperature dropped further. Emma's small body trembled against hers. "Just a little longer, Emma," Olivia murmured, though she had no plan beyond sitting on these steps until someone either offered help or chased them away. The sound of hoofbeats drew her attention to the street. A tall man on a chestnut stallion approached, his broad-shouldered silhouette unmistakable against the dimming sky. As he drew closer, Olivia recognized Preston York, owner of the Pine Ridge Ranch outside of town. She'd seen him occasionally at the general store, heard the whispers about him, a man who kept to himself, who'd built his ranch from nothing after returning from the war. Some said he was generous to those who worked for him. Others claimed he was cold and distant. He reined in his horse before the church steps, his expression unreadable beneath the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat. For a long moment he simply studied them, and Olivia felt a flush of shame at their bedraggled appearance. "Evening, madam," he finally said, his voice deep and steady. "Mr. York," Olivia acknowledged, straightening her back despite her exhaustion. She would not appear broken, not even now. His gaze shifted to Emma, who peered up at him with wary curiosity. "You're Thomas Fletcher's widow," he stated rather than asked. Olivia nodded, surprised he knew. Preston York dismounted in one fluid motion that spoke of years in the saddle. He approached the steps, stopping a respectful distance away. "I've got 2 more seats at my table," he said simply, "and a warm stove. Looks like you both could use them." Emma looked up at her mother with a flicker of hope that nearly broke Olivia's heart. They were desperate, but Olivia hesitated. She knew nothing about this man beyond his reputation. As if reading her thoughts, Preston added, "Mrs. Holloway, my housekeeper, lives at the ranch. She'll see you settled. I need help around the place and winter's coming." He paused. "It's just an offer of work and shelter, madam, nothing more." The wind gusted stronger and Emma shivered violently. "What kind of work?" Olivia asked, her voice barely audible above the wind. "Cooking, mending, whatever suits your skills. Mrs. Holloway isn't as young as she was, and the ranch hands need feeding." His eyes, the color of weathered leather, met hers directly. "I pay fair wages." Olivia considered their options, which were precisely none. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford, not with Emma's health at stake. "We accept your offer, Mr. York," she said finally, rising to her feet and helping Emma up. "Thank you." He nodded once, then reached for their meager belongings, a single carpet bag containing everything they had left in the world. "The horse's name is Thunder," Preston said to Emma as he lifted the child onto the saddle. "He's gentle as a lamb." Emma's small hand tentatively stroked the horse's mane, earning a soft nickering in response. A ghost of a smile touched her lips, the first Olivia had seen in days. Preston helped Olivia mount behind her daughter, then took the reins and began leading them down the main street. They passed the general store where Olivia had been denied credit that morning, the saloon where she'd been offered work of a different kind that she'd refused despite her desperation. "The ranch is 5 miles out," Preston explained as they left the town behind. "We'll be there before full dark." As the lights of Westcliffe receded behind them, Olivia felt a curious mixture of relief and trepidation. She was placing their fate in the hands of a virtual stranger, a man whose eyes carried shadows she recognized all too well, the look of someone who had seen too much hardship. "Mr. York," she said softly, ensuring Emma couldn't hear over the rhythm of the horse's hooves, "I want you to know we won't be a burden. I can work hard and I'll earn our keep." He glanced back at her, his expression softening slightly. "I don't doubt that, Mrs. Fletcher. Not for a moment." The road stretched before them, winding through stands of pine and aspen. The first stars appeared in the darkening sky, bright pinpricks of light in the vast Colorado wilderness. Olivia tightened her arms around Emma, allowing herself to hope, just a little, that they might have found not just shelter for the night, but perhaps a chance to rebuild their shattered lives. The Pine Ridge Ranch materialized out of the twilight gloom, a sprawling main house with a wide porch, several outbuildings, and a large barn. Lamplight glowed in the windows, promising warmth within. As they approached, a dog barked and a woman appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. "Preston York, I was about to send the boys out looking for you," she called, her tone scolding but affectionate. Her eyes widened as she noticed Olivia and Emma. "Well now, who have we here?" "Mrs. Fletcher and her daughter Emma," Preston replied, helping them down from Thunder. "They'll be staying with us. Mrs. Fletcher will be helping you around the house." The older woman's face creased into a warm smile. "Well, bless my soul, it's about time we had another woman around here." "I'm Agnes Holloway, dear. Come in, come in. You both look half frozen." Preston nodded to Mrs. Holloway. "Get them settled, Agnes. I'll see to Thunder and be in shortly." As Preston led the horse toward the barn, Mrs. Holloway ushered them inside the house. The warmth from the large cook stove hit Olivia like a physical force, making her realize just how cold she had been. "Sit yourselves down," Mrs. Holloway insisted, pulling out chairs at the large kitchen table. "Supper's nearly ready. We've got beef stew and fresh bread tonight." Emma's eyes grew wide at the mention of food, and Olivia felt tears threatening. She blinked them back, determined not to show weakness. "Thank you, Mrs. Holloway. This is very kind." "Nonsense, child, and it's Agnes, please." The housekeeper bustled about, setting 2 more places at the table. "When was the last time you two had a proper meal?" "Yesterday morning," Olivia admitted. "We had a bit of bread." Agnes clicked her tongue in disapproval. "Well, you're both getting double helpings tonight, and that's that." She smiled at Emma. "Would you like to help me set out the spoons, young lady?" Emma nodded shyly, sliding off her chair to follow Agnes around the table. Olivia watched, amazed at how quickly the older woman had put her daughter at ease. The kitchen was large and well appointed, with copper pots hanging from a rack and bunches of dried herbs suspended from the ceiling beams. A small sitting area with comfortable chairs faced the fireplace at one end. Everything was spotlessly clean and organized. "How many people live here?" Olivia asked, trying to gauge what her workload might be. "Well, there's Mr. York, of course. Then there's me. I've been with him since he built this place 8 years ago. We've got 4 ranch hands who take their meals here, good boys, all of them. 2 more who have got their own cabins and families down by the creek. Agnes smiled at Emma. And now there's you too. The door opened, and Preston entered, bringing with him a gust of cold air and the scent of horses and leather. He hung his hat and coat on a peg by the door and rolled up his shirt sleeves, revealing corded forearms tanned by the sun. Ranch hands have already eaten and gone to the bunkhouse, he told Agnes. Said they'd let us get our new arrivals settled. Good. They've got manners, at least. Agnes brought a large pot to the table. Sit down, Preston. These poor souls need feeding. As they gathered around the table, Olivia was struck by the surreal quality of the moment. That morning she'd awakened with no hope, no plan beyond getting through another day. Now she sat at a stranger's table, with a roof over her head and food for her daughter. Preston York bowed his head briefly before serving stew into their bowls, starting with Emma's. The little girl's eyes were huge as she watched the chunks of beef and vegetables pile up. Go ahead, sweetheart, Olivia encouraged gently. Remember your manners. Thank you, sir, Emma whispered before picking up her spoon with trembling fingers. You're welcome, Miss Emma, Preston replied, his voice gentler than Olivia had heard it yet. They ate in silence for a few minutes, Olivia struggling to pace herself despite her hunger. The stew was delicious, rich and flavorful, with tender beef and fresh vegetables. The bread was still warm, slathered with fresh butter that melted into the soft interior. Mrs. Fletcher, Preston said after a while, Agnes will show you and Emma to your room after supper. There's a small bedroom off the kitchen that should suit you both. Tomorrow we can talk about your duties and wages. Thank you, Mr. York. We're grateful for your kindness. It's not kindness, madam. It's an arrangement that benefits us both. His tone wasn't unkind, but it was clear he wanted no misunderstandings. Of course, Olivia replied, feeling her cheeks flush. Agnes shot Preston a disapproving look. Don't mind him, dear. He's got no way with words, our Mr. York. Been alone too long with just horses for company. A flicker of something that might have been amusement crossed Preston's face. So briefly, Olivia thought she might have imagined it. After supper, Agnes showed them to their room, small but clean, with a double bed covered in a handmade quilt, a washstand with a porcelain basin, and a small chest of drawers. The necessary is out back, Agnes explained. There's a chamber pot under the bed for nighttime. Bathing day is Saturday. We heat water in the kitchen and use the big copper tub. She patted the bed. These linens are fresh. I change them every week. It's perfect, Olivia said sincerely. After nights spent on church steps and in barns, this room seemed like a palace. Agnes pulled a nightgown from a drawer. This might fit Emma. I've kept some things from when my granddaughter visits. She hesitated. I don't have anything that would fit you, though. We have night clothes, Olivia assured her, though in truth, they'd been wearing the same garments day and night for a week. Agnes nodded, but her sharp eyes missed nothing. I'll find you something tomorrow. Get some rest now. Morning comes early on a ranch. After Agnes left, Olivia helped Emma wash her face and hands in the basin, then changed her into the borrowed nightgown, which was slightly large but clean and warm. I like it here, Mama, Emma murmured as Olivia tucked her into bed. Mrs. Holloway is nice. Yes, she is, Olivia agreed, smoothing her daughter's hair back from her forehead. And we're going to work hard and be grateful for this opportunity. Is Mr. York angry? He doesn't smile. Olivia considered how to answer. I think Mr. York is serious, not angry. Some people don't show their feelings the way others do. Like Papa didn't cry when he hurt his hand that time. That's right. Olivia swallowed past the lump in her throat at the mention of Thomas. Now, time to sleep. Emma yawned, her eyelids already drooping. Will we stay here for always, Mama? We'll stay as long as Mr. York needs our help, Olivia replied carefully. Now sleep, my love. Within minutes, Emma's breathing deepened into the rhythm of sleep. Olivia stood watching her for a long moment, overwhelmed by gratitude that her daughter would sleep safe and warm tonight. She changed into her nightgown, grimacing at its soiled state, and washed as best she could with the remaining water in the basin. Tomorrow she would ask Agnes about laundering their few garments. As Olivia slipped into bed beside Emma, she found herself thinking about Preston York. There was a sternness to him, certainly, but also a fundamental decency. He could have ridden past them today. Instead, he'd offered them not just shelter for a night but possibly a new beginning. Whatever his reasons, Olivia was determined to prove his decision a sound one. She would work harder than he expected, make herself indispensable. For Emma's sake, she would succeed here. With that resolution firmly in mind, exhaustion claimed her, and Olivia fell into the first peaceful sleep she'd had since Thomas's death. Morning came with the crowing of a rooster and the smell of coffee brewing. For a disorienting moment, Olivia didn't recognize her surroundings. Then Emma stirred beside her and memory flooded back. "Wake up, sweetheart," she whispered, gently shaking her daughter. "It's our first day at Pine Ridge Ranch." Emma sat up, rubbing her eyes. "I dreamed about Thunder," she said. "Can I see him today?" "Perhaps, if you're very good and we finish our work early." Olivia helped her dress in their cleanest set of clothes, which was saying very little. "Remember what I told you. We must be grateful and work hard." "Yes, Mama," Emma replied solemnly. When they entered the kitchen, they found Agnes already hard at work, bacon sizzling in a large cast iron skillet, biscuits browning in the oven. The aroma made Olivia's stomach growl audibly. "Good morning, dears," Agnes beamed. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than we have in months," Olivia replied honestly. "How can I help? Coffee's ready if you'd pour. Cups in the cupboard there." Agnes nodded toward a shelf. "Boys will be in soon, ravenous as always." Olivia poured coffee into mugs while Emma carefully arranged spoons beside each plate. Within minutes, the door opened and Preston entered, followed by 4 young men who removed their hats as they crossed the threshold. "Morning, Mrs. Fletcher, Miss Emma," Preston greeted them, his voice formal but not unfriendly. "These are my hands, Jake, Samuel, Caleb, and William." The men nodded respectfully, and Olivia returned the greeting. She noticed they remained standing until Preston took his seat at the head of the table, then settled themselves with barely contained enthusiasm for the breakfast Agnes was serving. The conversation during the meal consisted mainly of ranch business fences that needed mending, a mare about to foal, preparations for the coming winter. Olivia listened carefully, building a mental picture of the operation. After breakfast, the men filed out to their tasks and Preston lingered at the table, refilling his coffee cup. "Mrs. Fletcher, if you have a moment, I'd like to discuss your position here." "Of course, Mr. York." Olivia sat across from him, hands folded in her lap. "Agnes will show you the household duties. I expect you to assist her with cooking, cleaning, laundry, and such. In return, you and Emma will have room and board plus $5 a week." Olivia's eyes widened. $5 was generous, more than she'd expected. "That's very fair, Mr. York." "Thank you," he nodded. "Your daughter, how old is she?" "Emma is 6. Old enough to start school soon." "Yes, though with circumstances as they've been." Olivia trailed off, not wanting to make excuses. "There's a school 3 miles from here. Once you're settled, we can arrange for her to attend. One of the men can take her on their way to town." Surprised by his consideration, Olivia nodded. "That would be wonderful. Emma's quite bright. Her father taught her letters before he passed." Something flickered in Preston's eyes, recognition, perhaps, or memory. I knew Thomas slightly, he said after a pause. Crossed paths with him in town occasionally. He seemed a decent man. He was, Olivia replied softly. The best of men. Preston cleared his throat. Well then, I'll leave you to Agnes. If you need anything, I'll be in the barn most of the morning. He stood, towering over the table. Thank you for coming to Pine Ridge, Mrs. Fletcher. I think you'll do well here. With that, he donned his hat and strode out, leaving Olivia to wonder at the curious mix of formality and kindness in their new employer. The days quickly fell into a rhythm at Pine Ridge Ranch. Olivia rose before dawn to help Agnes prepare breakfast for the ranch hands. Mornings were spent cleaning the main house, afternoons dedicated to laundry, mending, or food preservation, depending on the day. By the end of her first week, Olivia's hands were raw from work, but her spirit felt lighter than it had in months. Emma thrived in the open air of the ranch. Agnes took to the child immediately, teaching her simple tasks like gathering eggs and setting the table. To Olivia's surprise, Preston occasionally took time to answer Emma's endless questions about the horses or show her how to feed the chickens without getting pecked. She reminds me of my sister at that age, he explained when Olivia thanked him one evening. Curious about everything. It was the first personal detail he'd shared, and Olivia carefully stored it away, gradually building a picture of the reserved man who had given them shelter. On her 10th day at Pine Ridge, Olivia was kneading bread dough when Agnes entered the kitchen with an armload of fabric. Found these in the storeroom, the older woman announced. Some of my old dresses and a few things that might be altered to fit Emma. Nothing fancy, mind you, but decent enough. Olivia's fingers stilled in the dough. Agnes, I couldn't possibly, nonsense. They're just gathering dust. Besides, Agnes lowered her voice, though they were alone in the house. It's not right, you having just those 2 dresses to your name, washing one at night to wear the next day. You're working here now, representing Pine Ridge when you go to town. Accepting the clothes with murmured thanks, Olivia felt a curious blend of gratitude and pride. She hadn't owned a new dress since before Thomas died, when they'd still believed the silver mine would make their fortune. That evening after supper, while Emma played with a rag doll Agnes had fashioned for her, Olivia sat by the fire altering one of the dresses. Preston entered from his study, where he often spent evenings with his ledgers. Mrs. Fletcher, he acknowledged, pouring himself a small measure of whiskey from a decanter on the sideboard. How are you finding Pine Ridge after your first days? Very well, thank you, Olivia replied, setting her sewing aside. Everyone has been most kind. He nodded, taking a seat across from her. The firelight cast shifting shadows across his face, softening the hard lines of his jaw and brow. For the first time, Olivia realized he was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps only in his early 30s, though responsibility and whatever shadows he carried made him seem older. Agnes tells me you're quite skilled with a needle, he remarked. Said your mending is the finest she's seen. My mother taught me, Olivia explained. She was a seamstress in Boston before she married my father and came west. Boston. Preston swirled the amber liquid in his glass. Never been east of the Mississippi myself. Born in Missouri, came to Colorado after the war. Which regiment did you serve with? Olivia asked, remembering the town gossip that he was a veteran. 8th Missouri Volunteer Infantry, Union side, he added, watching her carefully for a reaction. Olivia nodded. My husband's family were Union supporters as well, though Thomas was too young to enlist. A comfortable silence fell between them as Preston sipped his whiskey and Olivia returned to her sewing. Emma had fallen asleep on a rug near the fire, the rag doll clutched to her chest. She's a good child, Preston observed. Reminds me of my niece. You have family nearby? Olivia asked, surprised. A shadow passed over his face. Not anymore. My sister and her husband were killed in a flash flood in '72. Their farm was down by the Arkansas River. I'm so sorry, Olivia murmured, understanding now why he'd taken special notice of Emma. Preston nodded once, acknowledging her sympathy. Their children went to my brother in California. I was in no position to take them then, just starting this place. He finished his whiskey. Life doesn't always give you the chances you want exactly when you want them. The depth of feeling in his voice caught Olivia by surprise. It was the most personal statement she'd heard from him, offering a glimpse of the man beneath the stern ranch owner. No, it doesn't, she agreed softly, thinking of her own changed circumstances. But sometimes it gives you unexpected chances just when you need them most. Their eyes met briefly across the space between their chairs, a moment of shared understanding that felt somehow significant. Then Preston stood, breaking the moment. It's getting late. I'll carry Emma to your room. Before Olivia could protest, he had gently lifted the sleeping child. Emma stirred but didn't wake, instinctively nestling against his chest. Olivia followed as he carried her daughter to their room and carefully placed her on the bed. "Thank you, Mr. York," Olivia whispered as he straightened. He nodded, suddenly awkward in the small, intimate space. "Good night, Mrs. Fletcher. Good night." As Olivia prepared for bed, she reflected on their conversation. For all his reserve, Preston York was not the cold man some in town believed him to be. There was depth there, and pain, but also a fundamental decency that had led him to stop for a desperate woman and child on church steps. The next morning brought the first real challenge of Olivia's new position. Agnes woke with a fever and chills, her face flushed, and her normally energetic movements slowed to a painful shuffle. "It's nothing, dear," the older woman insisted as Olivia helped her back to bed. "Just a touch of something. I'll be right as rain by noon." But by noon, Agnes's fever had worsened, and Olivia took charge of the household with determined efficiency. She prepared a hearty lunch for the ranch hands, regularly checked on Agnes, and kept Emma occupied with simple tasks to prevent her from disturbing the sick woman. When Preston returned from checking the western pasture, he found the house running smoothly despite Agnes's absence. Dinner was simmering on the stove, the kitchen was spotless, and fresh baked bread cooled on the rack. "Agnes is ill," Olivia explained, wiping flour-covered hands on her apron. "I've made her some broth, but she's quite feverish. I thought perhaps the doctor should be called if she's no better by morning." Preston's brow furrowed with concern. "I'll look in on her. If she needs the doctor, I'll send one of the boys tonight. No sense waiting." He returned from Agnes's room looking grim. "Fever's high. I'm sending Jake for Dr. Mitchell now." He paused, observing the orderly kitchen. "You've managed well in her absence." "I ran our household in Westcliffe," Olivia reminded him. "This is larger, but the principles are the same." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "So they are. I'll help you serve dinner when the men come in." True to his word, Preston assisted with the evening meal, his presence beside her at the stove an unexpected but not unwelcome development. The ranch hands, concerned about Agnes, ate quickly and with less of their usual banter. After dinner, while Preston sat with Agnes waiting for the doctor, Olivia put Emma to bed and then prepared a pot of strong coffee. She was just pouring a cup when hoofbeats announced the doctor's arrival. Dr. Mitchell, a white-haired man with kind eyes and a perpetually harried expression, diagnosed Agnes with influenza. "Nothing too serious if properly treated," he assured them as he packed his bag. "Plenty of fluids, rest, and this powder for the fever every 4 hours. She should turn the corner in a few days." After the doctor left, Olivia found Preston in the kitchen, his expression troubled as he stared into the fire. "Agnes will recover," she said gently, placing a cup of coffee on the table beside him. "I know, it's just—" He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of discomposure. "She's been with me since the beginning, more than a housekeeper. She and her husband helped me build this place before he passed." "You care for her," Olivia observed. "That's nothing to be unsettled by." He glanced up, his expression unreadable in the firelight. "Some might say I don't care for much of anything or anyone, Mrs. Fletcher. Some would be wrong then." Olivia surprised herself with her boldness. "I've seen how you are with Emma, with your men. You're reserved, not cold." For a moment, Preston seemed taken aback by her assessment. Then the corner of his mouth lifted in a slight smile. "You're observant. I've had to be." She sat across from him, cradling her own coffee cup. "When you're alone with a child, you learn to read people quickly. It's a matter of survival." "And what do you read in me, Mrs. Fletcher?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with more significance than its simple words suggested. Olivia considered carefully before answering. "A man who has known loss but hasn't let it harden him completely. A man who stopped for strangers on church steps when others walked past." He held her gaze for a long moment, then looked away. "I'll take the first watch with Agnes. You should rest. Tomorrow will be a full day without her help." "I'll relieve you at midnight," Olivia insisted. "You need rest too." After a brief argument that Olivia surprisingly won, Preston agreed to the arrangement. True to her word, Olivia woke at midnight and made her way to Agnes's room, where she found Preston dozing in a chair beside the bed. "Mr. York," she whispered, touching his shoulder lightly. He woke instantly, fully alert in the way of men accustomed to danger. His hand actually moved to his hip where a gun would be before he recognized her in the lamplight. "Your turn to rest," Olivia said, pretending not to notice the reflexive gesture. "I'll wake you if there's any change." Preston nodded, rising stiffly from the chair. "Thank you, Mrs. Fletcher." He hesitated at the door. "Olivia." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and the sound of it in his deep voice sent an unexpected warmth through her. "Preston," she acknowledged with a small smile. Over the next 3 days, they fell into a new rhythm. Olivia managed the household duties while caring for Agnes and Emma. Preston took on tasks he normally left to the housekeeper, revealing a domestic competence that surprised Olivia. They shared the night watches at Agnes's bedside, their conversations during the handoff growing incrementally longer and more personal with each passing night. On the 4th night, Agnes's fever broke. By morning, she was sitting up in bed, weak but alert, demanding to know what had happened in her absence. "The house is still standing," Preston assured her with unusual humor in his voice. "Thanks entirely to Mrs. Fletcher. The rest of us would have burned the place down trying to make coffee." Agnes snorted. "Glad to hear someone's got sense around here." Her sharp eyes moved between Preston and Olivia. "You two seem to have managed together well enough." Something in her tone made Olivia flush. "We've muddled through. Now, I've made you some broth, and you're going to eat every drop before we discuss anything else." As October gave way to November, the rhythm of ranch life continued. Agnes recovered her strength. Emma started attending the small school 3 miles away, and Olivia settled more comfortably into her role. Her relationship with Preston evolved cautiously from employer-employee to something like friendship. They often sat together in the evenings after Emma was asleep, sometimes talking, sometimes sharing comfortable silence as Preston reviewed his ledgers and Olivia mended or sewed. On a crisp Sunday in mid-November, when the ranch hands had the day off and Agnes was visiting her sister in town, Preston suggested a ride to check the northern pasture. Emma's been asking to see more of the ranch, he explained. Thought you both might enjoy getting out for a while. Emma, predictably, was ecstatic at the prospect of riding Thunder. Olivia was more hesitant, having limited experience with horses, but Preston assured her the mare he'd selected for her was gentle. Daisy here would sleep through a thunderstorm, he said as he helped Olivia mount. His hands at her waist were strong and sure, lifting her effortlessly into the saddle. For a brief moment, they were close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, close enough to notice the clean scent of soap and leather that clung to him. The moment passed as he stepped back, but Olivia felt a lingering awareness of his presence as he lifted Emma onto Thunder and mounted his own horse. The northern pasture lay beyond a ridge of pine-covered hills. As they rode, Preston pointed out landmarks and shared stories about the ranch's early days. Emma, securely positioned before him on Thunder, peppered him with questions that he answered with uncharacteristic patience. How many cows do you have, Mr. York? About 200 head of cattle, Miss Emma. And how many horses? 15 working horses plus 3 new foals born this spring. Will I get to see the foals? We're heading to see them now. Olivia watched their interaction with a mixture of gratitude and something else she wasn't quite ready to name. Since Thomas's death, Emma had lacked a male presence in her life. Seeing her respond so naturally to Preston stirred complicated emotions in Olivia's heart. They crested a hill to find a breathtaking vista spread before them, the ranch buildings nestled in the valley below, the vast expanse of pasture land beyond, and the majestic Rocky Mountains rising in the distance. Stands of aspen trees, their leaves turned golden, dotted the landscape. It's beautiful, Olivia breathed. Preston nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. Took me 2 years to find the right piece of land. Knew this was at the moment I saw it. You've built something remarkable here. Started with nothing but a tent and determination, he said, a rare note of pride in his voice. First winter nearly broke me. Second wasn't much better, but I kept at it. Like you keep at everything, I imagine, Olivia observed. Their eyes met over Emma's head, and something silent passed between them, mutual respect, perhaps, or recognition of a shared quality. They rode on to a small meadow where 3 mares grazed with their foals. Emma's delight at the sight of the gangly young horses made both adults smile. Can I pet one, Mr. York, please? If we're very quiet and slow, Preston agreed, dismounting and helping her down from Thunder. They're still skittish around strangers. Olivia watched as Preston guided Emma toward the nearest foal, his large hand enveloping her tiny one, his movements deliberately gentle, and his voice a low, soothing murmur. For a man who seemed so formidable, he showed remarkable tenderness with both child and animals. When he helped Olivia down from her mare, his hands lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary. Their eyes met, and Olivia felt a flutter of awareness that both thrilled and alarmed her. She wasn't ready for such feelings, wasn't sure she ever would be again after losing Thomas. Preston seemed to sense her discomfort and stepped back, turning his attention to securing the horses. Thank you for bringing us here, Olivia said, striving for a normal tone. Emma will remember this day for a long time. As will I, he replied quietly, his gaze direct and unguarded for once. They spread a blanket on the grass and shared the picnic lunch Agnes had packed before leaving for town. Emma, exhausted from excitement, fell asleep on the blanket after eating, leaving the adults to converse in low voices. She's flourishing here, Preston observed, watching Emma's peaceful slumber. You both are. Yes, Olivia agreed. I never expected to find such a haven after Thomas died. When you found us on those church steps, I'd nearly lost hope. What happened? Preston asked. After the mine accident, I mean. Thomas had family in town, didn't he? Olivia sighed. His parents died years ago. His brother Jeremiah owned the boarding house where we stayed, but after Thomas died, Jeremiah made it clear that his charity had limits. He claimed we were bad for business. A widow and child reminded the miners of the dangers they faced. She twisted the simple gold band she still wore. When the money ran out, so did his familial concern. Anger flashed in Preston's eyes. That's not how family behaves. Not all family is like yours, it seems, Olivia replied. You speak of your sister and her children with such care. Clara was the best of us, Preston said, his gaze distant with memory. Gentle but strong. Her husband Daniel was a good man too. They deserved better than they got. As did Thomas, Olivia murmured. He worked so hard for our future, had such dreams for Emma. A comfortable silence fell between them, the shared understanding of loss creating a bond that transcended their relatively brief acquaintance. What were your dreams, Olivia? Preston asked suddenly. Before the mine, before Westcliffe, the question startled her. No one had asked about her dreams in so long. I wanted to open a dress shop, she admitted. I have a good eye for design, or so my mother always said. I thought perhaps when Emma was older. Why not still? Preston suggested. You've skill enough. I've seen your work. His belief in her possibility caught Olivia off guard. Perhaps someday, she said softly. For now, I'm grateful just to have security for Emma. When Emma woke, they packed up the remains of their picnic and mounted their horses for the return journey. The afternoon had developed a sharper chill, and Preston insisted Olivia wear his coat despite her protests. I'm used to the cold, he said firmly. Colorado winters and I came to an understanding years ago. The heavy coat carried his scent and warmth, enveloping Olivia like an embrace. She found herself oddly reluctant to return it when they reached the ranch house as twilight descended. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Olivia sat by the fire working on a dress she was making from fabric Agnes had given her. Preston entered from his study and paused, observing her work. That's becoming quite beautiful, he remarked. Thank you. It's for Emma's Christmas. Her first new dress in over a year. Olivia smiled up at him. I have plans for a matching doll dress as well for the rag doll Agnes made her. Preston settled into his usual chair. Christmas, he mused. Haven't properly celebrated in years. Just another day on the ranch, mostly. Not this year, Olivia declared impulsively. Emma deserves a proper Christmas, and so do you and Agnes and the men. Seeing his startled expression, she added, if you wouldn't mind, that is. A slow smile spread across Preston's face, transforming his stern features. I wouldn't mind at all, Olivia. In fact, I think it's exactly what Pine Ridge needs. The weeks leading up to Christmas were filled with secret preparations. Olivia enlisted Agnes's help in making gifts for the ranch hands, knitted scarves and fresh baked treats packaged in cloth bags. For Preston, she worked late into the night on a special project, a finely embroidered handkerchief with his initials, and an image of Pine Ridge Ranch worked into the design. Preston, for his part, disappeared into town more frequently than usual, returning with mysterious packages that he secreted away in his study. He and William, the youngest ranch hand, ventured into the forest and returned with a magnificent pine tree that they installed in the corner of the main room. On Christmas Eve, the entire household gathered for a special dinner. The ranch hands, usually boisterous, were almost shy in their pressed shirts and combed hair. Agnes had outdone herself with the meal, and Olivia had decorated the house with pine boughs and red ribbons. Emma, beside herself with excitement, had been allowed to help string cranberries for the tree. As they finished their dessert, Agnes's famous apple pie, Preston rose from his seat at the head of the table. "I'd like to propose a toast," he said, raising his glass. "To Pine Ridge Ranch and all who make their home here. This past year has brought changes and new faces." His gaze lingered on Olivia and Emma. "I believe we're the better for it." A chorus of "hear, hear" rose from the men. Emma beamed with pride at being included in such an adult moment. After dinner, they gathered around the tree. Preston surprised everyone by producing small gifts for each ranch hand, practical items like new gloves or knives, but chosen with obvious thought to each man's preferences. Agnes received a beautiful shawl that brought tears to her eyes. For Emma, there was a hand-carved wooden horse that looked remarkably like thunder. "So you'll always remember your first ride," Preston told her as she threw her arms around his neck in gratitude. When the men had departed to the bunkhouse and Agnes had retired, only Preston, Olivia, and Emma remained by the fire. "There's something for you as well," Preston said quietly, handing Olivia a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside, Olivia found a leather-bound book of poetry, Tennyson, one of her favorites. "How did you know?" she asked, running her fingers over the embossed cover. "You mentioned it once when we were discussing books you missed from your parents' home." He looked almost shy. "I saw it in Denver last month when I went for supplies." Touched that he had remembered such a casual remark, Olivia presented him with her gift. The handkerchief, she thought, seemed inadequate compared to his thoughtful present, but Preston received it with genuine appreciation. "This is exquisite work," he said, examining the detailed embroidery. "I've never owned anything so fine." "It's just a small token of gratitude," Olivia replied, suddenly self-conscious, "for all you've done for us." Emma, fighting sleep but determined to remain part of the celebration, leaned against Olivia's side. "This is the best Christmas ever," she declared with childish certainty. "I believe you're right, Miss Emma," Preston agreed, his expression softer than Olivia had ever seen it. "The very best." After Emma finally succumbed to sleep and was carried to bed, Olivia and Preston sat together by the dying fire, reluctant to end the evening. "Thank you," Olivia said softly. "Not just for the gift, but for making this Christmas special for Emma. After losing her father, I wasn't sure she would ever feel such joy again." "Children are resilient," Preston replied. "More so than adults sometimes." "Yes, but they need security, stability. You've given her that, given us both that." Preston's gaze was intent in the firelight. "You've brought something to Pine Ridge too, Olivia, something it was missing." "Agnes's cooking was excellent long before we arrived," she teased gently. "Not that." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "Life, family, purpose beyond work and survival." The word family hung between them, laden with possibility. Olivia felt her heart quicken, aware that they were approaching a threshold neither had acknowledged openly. "Preston," she began, uncertain what she meant to say. He reached across the space between them and took her hand. His calloused palm was warm against her skin, the touch sending awareness spiraling through her. "I won't rush you," he said quietly. "I know you're still mourning Thomas, but I want you to know that I hope you and Emma will make Pine Ridge your permanent home, not just your place of employment." Olivia looked down at their joined hands. "Emma has come to love it here," she said carefully, "and you," his voice was low, almost vulnerable, she met his gaze directly. "I've found peace here that I thought was lost forever. And—" she hesitated, then gathered her courage. "And I've found myself caring for you in a way I didn't expect." The smile that transformed his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "I've loved you since I found you on those church steps, Olivia Fletcher. Loved your courage, your grace, your fierce protection of your daughter. I just didn't know how to show it. You showed it in every way that mattered, Olivia whispered, her throat tight with emotion, in kindness and respect and patience. Preston moved to sit beside her on the sofa, still holding her hand. I'm not asking for promises tonight, just hope. The possibility of a future together. There is more than possibility, Olivia assured him. There is certainty that Emma and I belong here now. The rest, she squeezed his hand, the rest will come with time. Gently, as if she might break, Preston raised her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. It was a gesture of such old-fashioned courtesy, such reverence, that Olivia felt tears spring to her eyes. Time we have, he murmured. All the time in the world. Winter settled fully upon Pine Ridge Ranch in January, bringing heavy snows that isolated them from town for days at a stretch. But within the warmth of the ranch house, a different kind of blossoming occurred. Olivia and Preston's relationship evolved slowly, with respect for her period of mourning and Emma's adjustment. Their courtship, for that was what it became, took place in small, everyday moments. Preston teaching Olivia to ride with greater confidence. Olivia showing him how to help Emma with her reading lessons. Evening conversations by the fire that grew increasingly personal, revealing the deeper currents of their characters and experiences. By February, Preston had taken to kissing Olivia's hand each night before they parted for their respective rooms, a ritual that grew increasingly meaningful. Agnes observed these developments with barely concealed satisfaction, occasionally making herself scarce in the evenings to give them privacy. One clear, cold night in late February, Preston suggested a walk despite the snow. Bundled in heavy coats and scarves, they strolled around the ranch yard, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. I received a letter from my brother today, Preston said as they paused to admire the stars. He and his family are planning to visit this summer. Wants to see the ranch, meet you and Emma. You've written to him about us? Olivia asked, surprised. Preston nodded, his expression visible in the bright moonlight. Told him I'd met the woman I intend to marry if she'll have me. Olivia's breath caught. Though their relationship had been moving in this direction for months, the direct statement still startled her. Preston, I'm not proposing tonight, he assured her quickly. Not properly. That deserves a special moment, not frozen toes and numb fingers. His smile was visible even in the dim light. But I wanted you to know my intentions, to understand that when I do ask, it won't be an impulsive decision but one I've considered carefully and with my whole heart. Olivia stepped closer to him, drawn by the sincerity in his voice. I appreciate your honesty and your patience. You're worth waiting for, Olivia Fletcher. You and Emma both. Impulsively, she rose on tiptoe and pressed a kiss to his cheek, her lips brushing against the edge of his beard. It was the first such gesture she had initiated, and Preston stood perfectly still, as if afraid any movement might shatter the moment. We should go back inside, Olivia murmured, suddenly shy. Preston nodded, offering his arm with formal courtesy. But as they walked back toward the warm lights of the house, his other hand came up to touch the spot where her lips had pressed against his skin, wonder evident in the gesture. Spring came early to the Colorado high country that year. By late March, the snow was retreating, and the first green shoots appeared in Agnes's kitchen garden. Emma, now 7, spent every free moment outdoors, delighting in the renewed life around the ranch. On a mild Sunday in April, Preston suggested a ride to a special place he wanted to show Olivia. Emma was happily engaged in helping Agnes bake cookies, so Olivia felt free to accept the invitation. They rode west from the ranch house, following a trail that wound through stands of pine and aspen just beginning to bud. After about an hour, they emerged into a beautiful meadow ringed by trees. A small stream bubbled along one edge and wildflowers dotted the new grass. "This is lovely," Olivia said as Preston helped her dismount. "It's my favorite spot on the ranch," he admitted. "I come here to think sometimes, or just to remember why I chose this life." They walked to the center of the meadow, where Preston spread a blanket he'd brought in his saddlebag. From the same bag, he produced a small picnic bread, cheese, apples, and a bottle of wine. "You planned this," Olivia observed with a smile. "For weeks," he confessed, returning her smile with one of his own. The change in him over the months since she'd arrived at Pine Ridge was remarkable. The stern, reserved man who had found them on the church steps had not disappeared entirely, but he'd softened, learned to smile more readily, to share his thoughts and feelings. They ate in companionable conversation, discussing ranch business, Emma's progress in school, and Agnes's latest matchmaking attempts for young William. As they finished the last of the wine, Preston's demeanor changed, becoming more serious. "Olivia, I brought you here for a reason today." Her heart quickened. She'd suspected as much from the moment he suggested the ride. "This meadow has always represented possibility to me," he continued. "When I first found it, I was still struggling to establish the ranch. I'd come here and imagine what Pine Ridge could become with enough hard work and determination." He took her hand. "Now, when I come here, I imagine a different future, one with you and Emma at its center." From his pocket, he withdrew a small wooden box. "This was my mother's," he said, opening it to reveal a simple but elegant gold ring set with a single pearl. "My father gave it to her when they left Missouri to start a new life further west. It represents courage and hope and love, all the qualities I see in you." Olivia's eyes filled with tears as Preston knelt before her on the blanket, still holding her hand. "Olivia Fletcher, you came into my life when I least expected it but most needed it. You've brought warmth and purpose back to Pine Ridge and to me. Would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife, of making our family official?" For a moment, Olivia thought of Thomas, his laugh, his dreams, the life they'd planned together. But that life was gone, washed away by tragedy and time. Before her knelt a man who had saved her and Emma from destitution, who had patiently earned their trust and love, who offered not just security but partnership and respect. "Yes," she whispered, her voice catching. "Yes, Preston York, I will marry you." His face transformed with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if meant for her all along. He rose and drew her to her feet, his arms encircling her waist. "May I?" he asked, his gaze dropping to her lips. In answer, Olivia lifted her face to his. Their first kiss was gentle, almost reverential, but it kindled something deep and powerful between them. When they finally drew apart, both were breathless. "I love you, Olivia Fletcher," Preston said softly, his forehead resting against hers. "I believe I have since I first saw you on those church steps, though I didn't recognize it then." "And I love you," Olivia replied, the words feeling both new and inevitable. "For your kindness, your strength, your goodness." They remained in the meadow for another hour, making plans for their future together. Preston wanted a June wedding if Olivia agreed. They would tell Emma together that evening. "You think she'll be happy about it?" Preston asked as they mounted their horses for the return journey. A hint of uncertainty colored his voice, revealing a vulnerability few ever saw. "Emma adores you," Olivia assured him. "She already asks when you'll be home if you're late for dinner, talks about our ranch to her schoolmates. I think she's been waiting for this longer than we have." His smile in response was like sunshine breaking through clouds. When they returned to the ranch, they found Emma and Agnes in the kitchen, flour dusting both their aprons and a plate of slightly misshapen cookies on the table. "We made ginger snaps," Emma announced proudly. "Agnes let me cut them out myself. They look delicious," Olivia praised, exchanging a glance with Preston. "Emma, sweetheart, Mr. York and I have something important to talk to you about." Emma's expression grew serious as she looked between the adults. "Is something wrong?" "Not at all," Preston assured her, kneeling to be at her eye level. "In fact, I hope you'll think it's something very right." He glanced up at Olivia, who nodded encouragingly. "I've asked your mother to marry me, and she said yes. But I wanted to ask your permission too, because we would be becoming a family together." Emma's eyes widened. For a moment she was perfectly still, processing this information. Then she launched herself at Preston, wrapping her small arms around his neck. "Really? You'll be my papa now?" Preston held her carefully, his expression a mixture of relief and profound emotion. "If you'd like that, yes." Emma pulled back to look at him solemnly. "I would like that very much. I've been waiting a long time for you to ask." Preston laughed, the sound rich with happiness. "Have you now?" "Yes," Emma declared with childish certainty. "Since Christmas, at least." Agnes, wiping tears from her eyes, declared that this called for a celebration. "I'll make a special dinner," she insisted. "And we'll need to start planning the wedding right away." As Agnes bustled about the kitchen, and Emma peppered them with questions about the ceremony, Olivia caught Preston's gaze across the room. The love she saw there, unguarded and complete, filled her with a contentment she had thought lost forever. That night, after Emma had finally gone to sleep, still excited about the day's news, Olivia and Preston sat together on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the vast Colorado sky. "I never thought I'd find happiness again," Olivia confessed, her head resting on his shoulder. "After Thomas died, it seemed like the end of everything." Preston's arm tightened around her. "I felt the same after Clara and Daniel died. Built this ranch, worked from dawn to dusk, but something was missing. And now I have everything I never knew I wanted," he said simply. "A family. A purpose beyond just surviving." Olivia touched the pearl ring on her finger, still marveling at the twist of fate that had brought her to this moment. "When you found us on those church steps and said there were 2 more seats at your table, I was just grateful for shelter and food. I never imagined that you'd end up marrying the gruff rancher," Preston finished with a soft chuckle. "That I'd find home again," Olivia corrected. "That Emma would have a father who loves her as much as Thomas did, that my heart could heal." Preston turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I promise you, Olivia Fletcher, that I will spend every day of our lives together ensuring you never regret saying yes." Under the vast canopy of stars, with the ranch quiet around them and the future stretching bright before them, Olivia leaned forward and kissed him a promise of her own, sealed without words. The wedding took place on the first Saturday in June, a perfect early summer day with clear skies and a gentle breeze. The ceremony was held in the meadow where Preston had proposed, transformed by Agnes and the ranch hands into an outdoor chapel. Wildflowers decorated a simple arch under which Reverend Johnson from the Westcliffe church officiated. Olivia wore a dress of pale blue silk that she had designed and sewn herself, with Agnes's help. Emma, serving as her only attendant, wore a matching dress and carried a posy of wildflowers tied with ribbon. The entire town seemed to attend, curious about the match but genuinely pleased for the couple. Preston York had earned respect in the community over the years, even if he'd kept largely to himself. And Olivia, in her months at Pine Ridge, had won friends with her warmth and skill. As Olivia walked toward Preston, led by William who had offered to give her away, she thought briefly of Thomas. He would be happy for her, she believed. Happy that she and Emma had found security and love again. The thought brought peace rather than pain. Preston stood tall and proud beneath the arch, wearing a new suit ordered from Denver. But it was his expression that Olivia would remember for the rest of her life, a look of such open love and wonder that it nearly stopped her heart. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, promises to love and honor each other through whatever life brought their way. When Preston slipped a gold band next to his mother's pearl ring on her finger, his hands were steady, but his voice broke slightly on the words "with this ring, I thee wed." After the reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Preston kissed her with restrained passion, mindful of their audience but leaving no doubt of his feelings. Emma, standing beside them, beamed with pride and happiness. The celebration afterward lasted well into the evening. Tables had been set up in the ranch yard, laden with food prepared by Agnes and the women of the church. There was music, fiddle and guitar played by the Simmons brothers from the neighboring ranch, and dancing under lantern light as the stars appeared overhead. Preston's brother James had traveled from California with his wife and children for the wedding. Watching Preston with his niece and nephews, Olivia felt a surge of gratitude for the man who had opened his heart, not just to her but to Emma as well. "He's a different man with you," James commented, coming to stand beside Olivia as she watched Preston twirling Emma in a dance. "Happier than I've seen him since before the war." "He's made us happy too," Olivia replied. "When he found us, we had nothing. Now we have everything." James nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Clara would have loved you. She always worried Preston would be alone forever, too stubborn to let anyone close. I think he just needed the right reason to open up. Or the right person," James suggested with a smile very like his brother's. As the celebration wound down and guests began to depart, Agnes took Emma back to the house. "She's staying with me tonight," the older woman reminded them with a meaningful look. "We've got plans for pancakes in the morning, so don't expect us early." Preston and Olivia, left alone in the yard with just a few lanterns still burning, swayed together to music only they could hear. "Mrs. York," Preston murmured against her hair. "I've been waiting all day to call you that." "I like the sound of it," Olivia admitted. He drew back slightly to look at her, his expression suddenly serious. "Are you happy, truly?" "No regrets." In answer, Olivia reached up to touch his face, tracing the line of his jaw. "My only regret is that we didn't meet years ago, but then I wouldn't have Emma. And you might not have built Pine Ridge. Perhaps everything happened just as it was meant to." Preston captured her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. "You're a wise woman, Olivia York. And you're a good man, Preston York, the best of men." Later, in the privacy of what was now their shared bedroom moved to the larger master suite Preston had previously occupied alone, they came together as husband and wife with tenderness that gave way to passion. Olivia discovered that the same strength and care Preston showed in all things translated to a considerate and attentive lover. In the quiet aftermath, lying in his arms as moonlight filtered through the curtains, Olivia felt a contentment so complete it brought tears to her eyes. "What is it?" Preston asked, concerned when he felt the dampness against his chest. "Happy tears," she assured him. "I just never expected to feel this way again, to feel whole." He gathered her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You've made me whole too, Olivia. You and Emma both." As summer progressed into fall, they settled into life as a family. Emma, officially adopted by Preston in a brief ceremony at the county courthouse, blossomed in her role as daughter of the ranch owner. She followed Preston around whenever possible, absorbing his knowledge of horses and cattle with an enthusiasm that delighted him. Olivia, meanwhile, found that marriage to Preston allowed her the security to pursue her own dreams as well. When she mentioned her old desire to design and sew clothing, Preston encouraged her to set up a small workroom in an unused bedroom. "You should start with commissions from Westcliffe," he suggested one evening as they discussed the idea. "Agnes says the women in town already admire your work." Mrs. Johnson asked where you got your Sunday dress last week. "Do you really think there would be interest?" "I know there would be," he assured her. "And if you want to open a proper shop in town someday, we can make that happen too." Olivia's heart swelled with love for this man who supported her ambitions as readily as he protected her security. By the time the aspens turned golden again, marking a year since Olivia and Emma had arrived at Pine Ridge, another change was in the air. Olivia confirmed her suspicions with Dr. Mitchell in early October and shared the news with Preston that evening after Emma was asleep. "A baby," he repeated, his expression shifting from surprise to wonder to pure joy. "We're going to have a baby. In the spring," Olivia nodded, watching his reaction carefully. "April, Dr. Mitchell thinks." Preston gathered her into his arms, holding her as if she were made of the most precious material imaginable. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair. "Thank you for this gift. You're happy, then?" He drew back to look at her, incredulous. "Happy doesn't begin to describe it. He searched for words. "I'm overwhelmed with gratitude. For you, for Emma, for this new life we've created together." Emma, when told the news the next morning, reacted with similar enthusiasm, already planning her role as big sister with characteristic determination. As Olivia's pregnancy progressed, Preston became, if possible, even more attentive. He insisted on hiring additional help for the household, despite Agnes's protests that she and Olivia managed perfectly well. He built a cradle with his own hands, working on it in the evenings by the fire while Olivia sewed tiny garments. Boy or girl? He would ask occasionally, watching her work on a gown or blanket. "Healthy," Olivia would reply with a smile. "That's all that matters." But privately, she found herself hoping for a son, a child with Preston's strength and integrity, his steady determination and capacity for love. The winter of 1879-1880 was harsh, with heavy snows and bitter cold. But inside the ranch house, warmth prevailed. Christmas was celebrated with even more enthusiasm than the previous year, with Emma fully involved in every preparation, and Preston displaying a childlike excitement that charmed Olivia. As April approached, the weather finally moderated, allowing the first wildflowers to appear in protected spots around the ranch. Olivia, her body heavy with child, found herself drawn to the meadow where Preston had proposed. "Should you be riding in your condition?" Preston fretted when she expressed the desire to visit the spot. "Dr. Mitchell said moderate activity is good for me," Olivia reminded him. "And I won't be riding alone, you'll be with me. Besides, Thunder is as gentle as a rocking chair these days." Unable to deny her anything, Preston arranged a slow, careful journey to the meadow, hovering protectively at her side the entire way. The meadow was bursting with new life wildflowers in brilliant blues and yellows, tender green grass, birds building nests in the surrounding trees. They spread a blanket in the same spot where Preston had proposed nearly a year earlier. "This place feels magical," Olivia said as she settled onto the blanket, her hands resting on her rounded belly. "Like it holds all our beginnings." Preston sat beside her, one hand covering hers. "Perhaps it will hold this beginning too." As if in response to his words, Olivia felt a sudden tightening across her abdomen. She had experienced these practice contractions before, but this one felt different, stronger, more purposeful. "Preston," she said, her voice carefully controlled, "I think we should head back to the ranch now." He caught her tone immediately, his eyes widening. "Is it time?" Another contraction answered the question before Olivia could, this one strong enough to make her gasp. Definitely time, she managed through clenched teeth. Preston's face paled, but his actions remained calm and decisive. He helped Olivia to her feet and toward the horses, but another contraction hit before they reached them. I don't think I can ride, Olivia admitted, leaning heavily against him. They're coming too quickly. Fear flashed across Preston's face before determination replaced it. Then we stay here. I'll ride for help. No, Olivia clutched his arm. Don't leave me, please. For a moment, Preston looked torn between conflicting imperatives: get help or stay with his wife. Then he made a decision, lifting 2 fingers to his mouth and producing a piercing whistle that echoed across the meadow. In the distance, one of the ranch hands working the spring pasture looked up. Preston waved both arms over his head in a prearranged emergency signal. The hand immediately mounted his horse and galloped toward the ranch. He'll bring help, Preston assured Olivia, leading her back to the blanket. Dr. Mitchell or Agnes, at least. Until then, it's you and me. Another contraction gripped Olivia, stronger than before. She clutched Preston's hand, drawing strength from his solid presence. I didn't plan on our child being born in a meadow, she gasped when the pain subsided. Children rarely arrive according to plan, Preston replied, attempting humor despite his evident anxiety. But I can't think of a better place than right here, where our family truly began. The next hour passed in a blur of increasing contractions. Preston did everything he could to make Olivia comfortable, supporting her back, wiping her brow with his bandana dipped in water from the stream, murmuring constant encouragement. "You're the strongest person I've ever known," he told her as she fought through a particularly difficult contraction. "You can do this, Olivia. Our child is lucky to have you as a mother." Just as Olivia felt the unmistakable urge to push, they heard hoofbeats approaching. Agnes arrived with Dr. Mitchell close behind, both looking relieved to find them still waiting. "Cutting it close, Mrs. York," the doctor commented as he quickly assessed the situation. "This baby isn't going to wait for a proper bedroom." "I told Preston," Olivia gasped. "This meadow holds our beginnings." With Agnes's experienced assistance and Preston's unwavering support, Olivia brought their son into the world as the afternoon sun bathed the meadow in golden light. His lusty cry echoed across the open space, a sound of pure life and possibility. "A boy, Doctor," Mitchell announced, placing the squirming infant on Olivia's chest. "A fine, strong boy." Olivia gazed down at their son through tears of exhaustion and joy. He had a shock of dark hair like Preston's, and when he briefly opened them, eyes of the same deep brown. "Thomas Preston York," she said softly, looking up at her husband. "If you agree," Preston, tears streaming unashamedly down his face, nodded. "It's perfect. He's perfect." He touched the baby's tiny hand with one finger, marveling when the infant instinctively grasped it. "Hello, Thomas. Welcome to Pine Ridge." They stayed in the meadow until Olivia was strong enough to be transported home in the wagon Agnes had thoughtfully brought along. Preston rode beside them, unwilling to be separated from his wife and newborn son for even a moment. Emma was waiting on the porch when they arrived, her face alight with excitement as Preston carefully carried Olivia and the baby inside. "Is that my brother?" she whispered, peering at the bundle in Olivia's arms. "Yes, sweetheart. This is Thomas. Would you like to hold him?" Under Agnes's watchful supervision, Emma sat in a chair and held her baby brother, her expression one of awe and instant love. "He's so small," she marveled. "You were that small once," Preston told her, his hand on her shoulder. "And now look at you, a big sister, responsible and smart." Emma beamed with pride at his words. "I'll take care of him, Papa, I promise." "I know you will," Preston assured her. "That's what family does." Later that night, With Emma finally asleep after hours of excited whispering with Agnes about the baby, Preston sat on the edge of their bed watching Olivia nurse Thomas. "I never knew it was possible to love this much," he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "To feel so much for so many people at once." Olivia smiled up at him, tired but radiant. "The heart expands," she said simply. "It makes room." Preston brushed a strand of hair from her face with gentle fingers. "When I found you on those church steps that day, I thought I was offering shelter to a woman and child in need. I never imagined you would save me too." "We saved each other," Olivia corrected softly, "and built something beautiful together." "Something that will last," Preston agreed, watching as their son's eyes drifted closed, milk-drunk and content against his mother's breast. Outside, the first stars appeared in the deepening twilight. Inside the ranch house that had become a home, the York family created by chance, cemented by choice, bound by love began the next chapter of their journey together. As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, Pine Ridge Ranch prospered under Preston's careful management. Olivia's dressmaking business, begun modestly with commissions from Westcliffe ladies, expanded to include clients from as far away as Denver who had heard of her designs. Emma thrived in school and in her role as big sister, developing a particular talent for working with the horses that made Preston burst with pride. 3 years after Thomas's birth, Olivia gave birth to a daughter they named Clara Agnes, honoring both Preston's sister and the woman who had become like a grandmother to their children. The family was complete, 2 children born of their union, and Emma, the daughter of their hearts if not their shared blood. On a warm autumn evening in 1885, 7 years after that fateful meeting on the church steps, Olivia stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching Preston teach Emma the finer points of roping. Thomas, now 5, attempted to imitate them with his own small lariat, while 3-year-old Clara sat on a blanket nearby, solemnly braiding a piece of leather under Agnes's guidance. The sight filled Olivia with a contentment so profound it almost hurt. From desperate widow to beloved wife and mother, from homeless and hopeless to mistress of a thriving ranch and business, the journey had been unexpected but perfect in its way. Preston, catching her watching, smiled across the yard, the easy, open smile that had once been so rare but now graced his face regularly. He said something to Emma, then crossed to the porch, taking the steps in his familiar long stride. "Happy?" he asked, drawing her into the circle of his arms. "Completely," Olivia assured him, resting her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "And you?" Preston's gaze swept over their children, their home, the land that stretched around them, the life they had built together from that first simple offer of 2 more seats at his table. "More than I ever dreamed possible," he replied, and sealed the truth of it with a kiss.